Welcome to Birken Forest Monastery's live stream. I'm Ajahn Sona, and today we have some special guests joining us. Ajahns Kovilo and Ajahn Nisabo from Clear Mountain Virtual Monastery. Let us begin with the first question, Pia.
Ajahn, our first question today is from Upasaka Karuna in Ashland, Missouri, United States. At a recent local retreat, a lay Buddhist teacher told a student that as Buddhists, we have the right to protect ourselves, including owning a gun, if that makes one feel safer. It made me feel uncomfortable to hear a Dhamma teacher suggesting to a student to own a gun for self-protection from other people. Do you feel this advice is in accord with the teachings of the Buddha for followers of the Buddhist path?
This reminds me of a song by the Beatles called Happiness is a Warm Gun. I don't... Specifically, the Buddha forbade monks from carrying weapons. So if you want specific advice on this matter, monastics are forbidden from carrying weapons, and of course there weren't any guns at the time, but anything that's threatening and so forth. And monks are sent off into the forests to live alone and are in a situation that they're very vulnerable. And at the same time, the Buddha does not allow them to defend themselves with guns or anything. The only defense they have is loving kindness. So for lay people, we don't lay down rules for them outside of the injunction not to kill. There are other types of ways of defending yourself. First of all, security itself. Locks on your door, etc. These are sensible ways of protecting yourself, and to be careful not to go in certain areas or to be accompanied by other people. The same, I've lived in the forest for much of my life, in the wilderness forests, and there are all kinds of bears and mountain lions and snakes and all this kind of stuff, and I've never carried a weapon or anything like that. Other people do carry weapons and so forth. The fact that you carry weapons does not necessarily mean that you'll be safe. In fact, sometimes, of course, the situation is that when you brandish a gun, the other person only has one option. It has to use the gun as well. So if you're not armed, you may find yourself in a better condition than if you're armed. It's more or less a philosophical choice. My own choice in my entire lay life and in my monastic life is not to arm myself or carry a gun. And I had to meditate on this, because the very fact that you've got this thing and you're prepared to use it means that you're walking about in fear of your life. And because we can't really protect our lives in the end, we have to decide whether you want to walk heavily armed or not walk through life with fear. So you just say, in order to ultimately walk through life without fear, you have to abandon the necessity to protect your life, in fact. This is where it becomes very radical. It's like, I'm not going to protect my life. Inevitably, we all will die. And perhaps, if you had a weapon, you might escape some situation. But in the meantime, you're strongly enough motivated to use that thing on somebody else and then have to deal with the afterthoughts of that. So this also comes to the issue of whether one should go to war and carry weapons in war, etc. My own attitude is that Buddhism is primarily pacifistic, and anybody who attains any degree of enlightenment does not agree to kill under any circumstances. And you'll see in Buddhist countries there's very rationalizations for, army enlistments. Being in the army is not a violation of the precept, but actually using your weapon to kill somebody is. So, and you don't escape it just because it's state sanctioned or anything like this. The consequences are there. You'll see that even in situations where police have to, they shoot it out with somebody, they're often traumatized by the whole experience as well. So you have to decide, by the way, the chances of being killed or saving yourself because you have a gun, or you'll have to examine the actual statistics on that and the chances of that happening. It may be very, very remote. But particularly American ethos is very gun-oriented. There are a lot of countries where it doesn't occur to people to have, especially handguns in their house. So it's a particular attitude and atmosphere in American politics and American society, and you'll have to decide whether you want to join that or not. But from a Buddhist point of view, it's probably much better to just commit to nonviolence and not to have a weapon that can kill somebody, but to be conscious of safety and appropriate measures of security. There are other ways to defend yourself in terms of safety, because we're not advocating that you neglect your own safety. And part of it is taking care of it with psychological attitudes. If you really have a great fear of violence, then you in a sense, you've died already. You've already been shot. And at the end of your life, you realize, oh, nobody actually broke into my house with a gun, and I wasted all those years fantasizing that it would happen. I think Mark Twain said, I'm an old man. I've had many problems, most of which never happened. So I'll leave that for your reflection.
Our next question is from the live stream from Hermit Mouse in Arizona, United States. Is walking the eightfold path simply a matter of meditating on each factor?
Yes, it requires meditation, but the word meditation is inadequate. It's the real word that the Buddha uses is bhavana, which is a cultivation. So it means a true integration of the truth that is expressed in each factor of the path. And that is integrated into your entire psychology. And that's the expression of the path. When you examine this in the analytical teachings, Abhidhamma and so forth, they talk about the path, the entire Eightfold Path arising in a moment, in a single moment kind of thing. All of the factors concurrently integrating. So these things are practiced separately. At first, you simply come across the information and you try to remember it in a coherent way, and then you reflect on it and you imagine it and you make it into an understandable vision. But even then, you need to rehearse that vision again and again until it becomes second nature. And then when it does become second nature, these path factors are integrated into your psyche, into your whole being. And then the path has been fully expressed through you.
Next question from the live stream is from No One Everyone in Iran. Dear Ajahn, to quote your Venerable Self from your discourse on Maranasati, quote, In the case of annihilation, you can't experience death at all, as it would require some form of consciousness in order to experience it," unquote. Is this also the case for parinibbana, as consciousness has been completely dissolved among other aggregates, leading to total cessation of awareness and any kind of further experience?
So there are two attitudes to this parinibbana, which I maddeningly refuse to resolve for everybody. There are two attitudes. One is that parinibbana is the end of things, the cessation of the five khandhas, etc. The other is that there's some indication that although the five khandhas cease, there is some sort of difficult to express continuation, which is this nibbanic being of some sort. Because of the limits of just logic, nobody has the tools to actually resolve these questions by means of mere logic, mere reason. I prefer to allow the problem to persist, not to attempt to just insist on one choice or another for people. But I also like to provoke the problems with both solutions, and also the attraction of one or the other of these, this duality. One of the conveniences of the annihilationist sort of idea is that it is something you can come to reasonably. The five khandhas are the totality, and they stop, and then nothing, and so it's fairly accessible to reason. It has appeal to. It's simpler. It's a simpler solution. The other one is more problematic. It's mind expanding, it's mystical, which is also a huge portion of all Dhamma is mystical and beyond expression. One of the conveniences of the cessation argument is that it is also death. It's like unplugging nothing. That is not death, but is the fact if you're not there. Notice one of the things that arahants, that they have prior consciousness. So the death is death, as the Buddha religions as well, is radical change. It's a death. The Christian, which is also completely problematic, you can't make sense of it, but is said to have experienced past birth, another birth, but also he is deathless. It fits neatly into a sort of annihilationist, because they're not going their own. So the beings who are not finished their journey in samsara are going to experience death. They are going to have a death experience, not a. But if we can actually see through this, something remarkable happens. If one realizes there isn't a me that was there yesterday, the same me that was yesterday, the same me that was here yesterday, the same one that was there as a child, as a teenager yesterday, the same one that was there as a child, as a teenager, etc. it's impossible. This idea of a constant me in the midst of change, is impossible, because the me has to be aware. And awareness is a process. It's not a thing. It's not a snapshot. It's a video. And this, if we inquire deeply enough, it alters us at an emotional level, at a psychological level. But it has to be very deep, because it's quite an easy concept to get. The idea that there's not a fixed self within the body, a little monad within the body or in the brain or something like that, is fairly easy to grasp intellectually, but is not easy to bring that into process in the ordinary world. It is a transformative experience. There's a modern philosopher that is known for this, more or less. I don't know whether it was independent thinking, discovery of this. This is this philosopher named Alfred North Whitehead. And he comes out of a very analytical, hard philosophical tradition, also a mathematician. And he gets onto this idea that the idea of fixed things is an impossibility, and he develops this process philosophy, and which actually ends up influencing religion as well, processed theology as well. He arrived at Harvard. Harvard got very interested in him. He's a friend and a co-author with Bertrand Russell, a very influential 20th century philosopher. And they got interested in this, so they brought him to Harvard to teach, and he did teach there for quite a number of years. And his first lecture was widely attended. It was full. Everybody attend. The second lecture, hardly anybody was there because nobody understood a word he said. Because talking about process is not the way our whole language system works. We have nouns and we have verbs. And when we abandon nouns, it's pretty weird. It's impossible to talk in verbs. I had a conversation, which you can see on the YouTube channel, with a rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi, and we were talking about this, and I said, it's very difficult to speak in verbs, and he says, unless you're a football player, So, this is why it's very difficult to understand and make clear. But that's what the Buddha is saying. Until you do get clear about this, you will be trapped in a world, in a thought process that doesn't represent reality as it is. And when you process it, you transform your emotional life as well. I hope that's perfectly clear. Let's go on to the next question.
Ajahn, the next question is from Julie in Kalamazoo, Michigan, United States. I read in the Lankavatara Sutra that the world is like a projection on the screen. So this morning I had a flat tire. At first I started getting very anxious, but then had the thought, the worse it gets, the more you practice. I then thought, if the main character in a movie had a flat tire, I wouldn't be upset. By the time I got air in the tire, I felt much better. And am I interpreting this sutra correctly?
Yeah, the Lankavatara Sutta is a Mahayana sutra, very famous, not from the Theravada tradition, but the process that you went through there is very good. Yeah, of course, movies they set up the situation so that we will be sucked in and engaged. We will be empathizing with the person with the flat tire. It's pouring down rain. It's the dark, rainy side of a highway, and this hapless character is out there, and you feel for them, and it's so even with movies, I mean, it's just a bunch of light on a screen, isn't it? And yet we're pulled into it, and it's all illusion, isn't it? So that's kind of what they're getting at, is that this, this experience called life is also an illusion. It's a play of light on your eyes and your ears. This is why the Buddha talks about the senses. What is the world, O monks? Sight, sound, smells, tastes, touches, ideas about sight, sound, smells, tastes, touches, etc. That is the world within is constructed of the five senses, but it is just a plays of light and vibrations of sound and so forth, and yet we are very sucked into the movie. So yeah, if we can remember, it is just a movie. Maybe if you're the usher at a movie theater and you've seen this thing 18 times in the last 7 days, you are much more detached from the experience. But we have to think about this, and I think most people get that idea, but they think, yeah, but then life would be no fun. If you're not into the movie, why watch the movie? Precisely. Okay, next question.
Next question from the live stream is from Auspicious Carp in Aubrey, Texas, United States. Dear Ajahn, before dabbling in Theravada, I had been a Christian and then something like a pantheist. Back in those days, I'd sometimes have a strong, quote, spiritual type of experience. I've heard other people confidently describe Theravada as being a spiritual path, but I haven't felt anything like that vast, Freudian, oceanic feeling in a very long time. Am I supposed to hand-wave the thing as being just some other fleeting samsaric pleasure that's unworthy of pursuit? Because I can't help but feel like something crucial is missing from my practice. Any guidance?
Yeah, you don't want to dismiss these spiritual experiences, and there are schools that do that. You'll find especially sometimes paranormal kind of things will arise, or supernormal states, knowing things that you shouldn't be able to know, and anticipating, maybe even the future, and then what you imagine suddenly is there, and so forth. These kind of things arise. They're not to be dismissed, actually. The Buddha talks about the arising of these supernormal conditions, and that they are not the main point of the practice, but they're ornaments. And they frequently arise because as the mind is being developed through meditation, they're not totally necessary for liberation, but they're not to be dismissed, but they are kind of pretty. They're beautiful. The Buddha describes them as ornaments, like as if golden earrings and so forth. Your primary beauty is there in the face, but in little ornaments and necklaces and stuff sparkle and so forth. They're enhancements. They're just interesting experiences, and that it's quite possible they arise more often. The more you practice, it's one of the benefits. It's one of the multiple benefits of the path. And there is a sutta called the Fruits of Recluseship, Samanapala Sutta, and it describes the various kind of rewards along the path that come before enlightenment even. By the way, the first one is if you become a monastic, the first thing is that you don't have to work. You don't need a job anymore. Which reminds me of a blues song from a guy named Booker White. And the line of it is, I wants to become a Baptist preacher so's I don't have to work. So there's benefits also recognized in the Christian tradition. Well, that monks are forbidden from making a livelihood on the side and so forth. Not we have work to do, spiritual work, but the Buddha's talking about benefits along the way that you can devote your full time. You can quit your day job. If you're a monastic, you quit your day job, and you just do this full time. And things will come along, and he also praises and not to ignore the beauty of what we call samadhi attainments. They're not to be dismissed, and some of them are very oceanic as well. Exquisitely beautiful, and those are the rewards of the path. And they're not identical with full attainment, but they participate in they coexist within the enlightened perspective as well. So part of some of the specific attributes of the enlightened mind, as mentioned, 7 factors of the enlightened mind one of them is samadhi, is there. Deep samadhi. And deep samadhi is an exquisite and refined and beautiful experience. So, yeah, you're not hand-waving away your oceanic experiences. They're that merges into your process and progress on the path as well. And so not to be dismissive of that. And as I say, some schools have that attitude, and if you look at the early suttas, he is not dismissive of those things. They are encouragements, and they're called the beautiful. They're beautiful along the way. The path, the Buddha says, is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, beautiful in the end. But only if it is the path. So sometimes you're struggling, or trying to get the path, and it's not very beautiful. But even the beginning of the path is beautiful. Yeah. Okay, next question.
Next question from the live stream is from Gabby in Germany. Dear Ajahn, could you please explain the term Vedana and how Vedana differs from pure physical sensations and emotions? Is it a purely mental phenomena or also a physical one?
The Buddha is speaking in plain language, and you see this in the Satipatthana, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. One of the foundations is Vedana, or feeling. But there are 2 types, and this is the way all cultures speak of them. There's physical, you get a bee sting. That's not a psychological experience. That's a physical experience. You stub your toe. There's physical experiences which are not connected to psychological states. However, of course, you can't experience them without being conscious. So if you're under anesthetic, you're going to have all kinds of things done to your body which would normally have physical feelings, and you have they're simply absent. So obviously consciousness is required for the experience of physical feelings, but it's not there's another type of feeling, which is emotive feeling. The feeling tone of certain emotions. Anger has an unpleasant feeling attached to it. They go, this thing called the Abhidhamma, it extrapolates all of these things. They give dozens or even hundreds of more or less triangles of certain types of volitions accompanied by feelings. And the feelings are, mental feelings or physical feelings, reactions. You have a mental reaction, so you stub your toe, that's a physical feeling, and then you feel sorry for yourself. And that's the psychological feeling. Then you're inflicting a secondary negative experience with that. So these are what's really important about this, and which I endlessly talk about, is not to confuse the attempt to be objective about physical feelings with being so-called objective about psychological feelings. This is where people get confused. The Buddha, they're instructed to be mindful of feelings that arise. So they're mindful of their anger, they're mindful of their sadness, they're just supposed to be mindful of it. And then you're mindful of a pain in your knee, or mindful of neutral sensations in your toes, or something like this. This is a basic mistake. There are two types of feelings. One, which you, yes, regard with mindfulness and attempt to be detached from. The other one is, it is a mistake to presume that you're detached from your own anger or your own sadness or your own, you're not mindful and detached. You are angry. You're not detached. You're not an observer. You are that. And you are to do something different with that feeling. The feeling that are connected to psychological feelings are to be, negative ones are prevented, removed, replaced. Positive ones are to be maintained, deepened, cultivated. But sensations in your physical body are to be observed with dispassion. Pain, neutral, pleasant. These can be observed dispassionately. And they occur, by the way, those bodily feelings occur to even a Buddha. So the Buddha has a bad back in his later life, and he's in pain, physical pain. But he's not in psychological distress. And he's not experiencing his own anger and his own sadness with dispassion. He doesn't have anger and sadness. He's not experiencing those things and standing outside of them, viewing them. That is not the case. And that's very commonly confused in many, like these mindfulness courses and philosophical ideas, that you're somehow detached from your feelings. The Buddha is saying something shocking. These standard human emotions, which people presume is life itself, are to be prevented and removed. And they are not part of the consciousness structures of the fully enlightened person. They're not feeling those things. But they do have physical sensations. So, by the way, I think I explained that in this book here, What Comes Before Mindfulness, which is, of course, right effort. And I've been like 20 years trying to sort this out, because it's very poorly understood in the general teachings of in some ways, Buddhism, as it came to the West, often is taught by lay teachers and so forth, and they tend to cater to their audiences and avoid things that are somewhat too demanding or difficult to process in ordinary life. But they do a disservice. You should tell people the higher teachings and let them sort out whether they're going to pursue them or not. And this is the psychology of the enlightened person has nothing to do with ordinary, what we call normative Western psychology. Because normative Western psychology doesn't believe that anybody can do this, but it is possible, and you can do it, and if you don't know about it, then you won't aspire to it. But if you find out of it and give it a shot and everything, you'll think, oh, I'm glad somebody said this and told me this, because it's not in the mainstream conversation. So I would like to introduce some guests here, Ajahn Kovilo and Ajahn Nisabo from Clear Mountain. And they're visiting, and we're so happy that they're visiting. We are brothers in the robes, and I'm encouraging them to develop the Sangha and community around Seattle area, which is as I've done in British Columbia and so forth. It's quite a task, and monks just don't do this by themselves. There's a huge network of people, and I hope that you will engage in and participate and help with this community. It doesn't happen out of thin air. It happens by direct effort and participation on the part of the larger lay community. There's always many more lay people than there are monastics, and things get developed when the two communities participate with each other. We will have a group discussion, Q&A, on Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. live stream with myself, Ajahn Kovilo, and Ajahn Nisabo, live from Birken Forest Monastery. Stay tuned for that. Tune in on this channel, etc. Yeah. And that's it for today.